Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides here for the CanAm Missing Project. You're watching Huck TV. That is our executive producer there, sleeping on the job. But she's doing good. We had a very calm day today. It was raining very hard outside, and we actually got a bunch of new snow in the mountains around here, which is good for May, but yeah. Huck is going to be around. She's doing good. Thanks for being here. And I've got a whopper of a show for you. Yes, a whopper. And we're going to talk about it. One case. A case you've never heard of. A case I never heard of. That was sent to me by one of you. So thank you. I appreciate you guys sending me in cases that match Missing 411. It shows that the audience is definitely getting it, and that makes my day. Now, a couple of you asked, Dave, hey, could you do a trail segment where I go through my backpack and I talk about things? I'll do that for you coming up. And if you have other recommendations for shows that you want to see that I haven't done, please send them over, and we'll kick it around and decide what Huck sees as valuable for the next show. The film that Kickstarter helped us with is coming along. We're getting the storyline done, signing some contracts with some people. We're getting it in place. I want to say there's a lady out there from Colorado named Mary. Mary is like an angel. She came along and Kickstarter, for no reason, kicked off her $10,000 contribution to the movie. No reason. I asked them why. They refused to answer. They just kicked her off. Mary said, Dave, don't worry about it. I'm going to send you a cashier's check. And she did. And what that did is it saved me 5% of her contribution, because that's what I have to pay back to Kickstarter for all the contributions that go through their site. But Mary wasn't the only one that they did that to. There were several others. I have no idea why Kickstarter did it. They said, well, we want to make sure that you're going to be safe. And I asked them, I said, what do you mean? If the money doesn't come through at the end, then I'm just short that money. But what gives you the right to take down somebody's contribution when there's no viable reason to it? They wouldn't answer. So there's other sites like GoFundMe, and I would recommend that people look at those other sites very hard, because what Kickstarter did was completely unjustified, in my humble opinion. And their lack of follow-up and explaining exactly what they did was disturbing. So, I know that there are a series of search and rescue people and others out there that watch, and you are appreciated. I also know there's some park rangers that watch, and you are appreciated. The show is for everybody. We've gotten a lot of comments in the last 3 or 4 months, and the number of rude and crude comments has gone down immensely. And hopefully you don't see them, because I take them down before you get a chance to. And I'll continue to do that. And when I'm out of town and when I'm filming, I'll put restrictions on the comments. And I know people don't like that, but that's the only real way I can control it. Now, you can still send emails to me. People ask me all the time, hey Dave, where can I send you an email? Missing 411, missing like missing, and then the number 4 and the number 1 at yahoo.com. If you know of a case, send it to me at that address. I told you I read everyone. So about a month ago, somebody got really mad at me. I mean, really mad at me because I didn't answer their email. I didn't really understand the email. And I thought that they were being rude in the way they positioned the email, so I just got rid of it. I read it, but and then they got super mad because I wouldn't address it. Well, if you're going to be rude, crude, or you're going to come off with an attitude, I've got 100 other emails where there is no attitude and the people are really friendly, and I'll answer those. But whatever. The people have asked just lately if I could come up with attire, t-shirts, things like that, hats that have Huck TV. You know, I've done that in the past for other peripheral things, and they never sell real well. And t-shirts, sweatshirts, they're the hardest things to sell because you don't know how many of each size to buy. And then in the end, you're done, you've got a big bunch sitting on the shelves that you can't sell because you ordered too many of one size. It's a very hard thing to manage. And because the margins on them are so small, if you end up with a big bunch of them, you lose money. So I might do it one of these days, but I'd probably have to do it on a pre-purchase where everybody buys, I order, you wait a month, and then I ship them. That'd be the only way, really, where I could guarantee I'm not going to lose money. All right, let's talk about this case. It's a tough one, real tough. The boy's name was Renee Hasee, 6 years old, went missing June 19th, 1996. And there was an article written about him called "The Missing Child That Time Forgot." And you know, I read that and I said, that appears so, because I've never heard of it. Now, Renee's father's name was Andreas, and the mother's name was Anita. And he lived with his mother because his mother and father were divorced. And his mother worked for the Postal Authority of Germany. Mom was German, Renee was German. And the family lived in the city of Bergheim, Germany. In June 1996, Anita, the mom, Renee, the son, and Anita's partner drove their motorhome from Bergheim to Algeciras, Portugal. So, Bergheim, Germany, to Algeciras, Portugal. Driving time, 24 hours, about 1,200 miles. At least that's what that says. Got it? And just so you know, where they're going down here is absolutely gorgeous at the end of Portugal. 1,250 miles, I think, would take a little more than what they're saying, but I'm just telling you what the map said. Well, the group arrived, and they liked a place called Amarera Beach that's in the city of Algeciras. And once the group arrived, they thought it was beautiful. And they had the motorhome so they could kind of stay anywhere. The population of the city is about 6,000 people. Not very big. Even today, it's not very big. It's located in the district of Faro, Portugal, founded in the 10th century by the Berbers. And it sits on the far southwest coast of Portugal, and it has tons of archaeological sites. In 1755, that entire area was almost decimated by a bad earthquake. And it's considered a small coastal village untouched by tourism even today. And it has a few castles that sit on the hills in the area. Beautiful. If you look online, it's really beautiful. And how you spell the city is Aljezur. The best time to visit the area, they're saying, is in the summer because it's warmer. Water's warmer. And the surfers like a few specific beaches because of the really good waves. And then there's some beaches that have very calm waves for tourists. The ocean water in that area is pristinely clean and beautiful. Now, you've heard about vacationing in Portugal before, and there's certain cities that are known as party towns. Not this. This is a quiet, kickback, surfing local spot. Now, that Amarera Beach is unique because it combines a mouth of a river with the ocean. And on low tide, it reveals tide pools and black rocks and sand dunes. It's considered unspoiled and beautiful and great for walking. The beach stretches about 600 meters. A meter is a yard, so about 2,000 feet. And it's one of the largest beaches in the city. And then they have boardwalks that lead down to the sand. Now, when you get down to the beach isn't real steep into the water. It's really shallow. So when the water goes out, sometimes there's these lagoons that end up that are maybe a foot and a half deep, but the water is absolutely perfectly clear. I saw a bunch of pictures. It's gorgeous. So low tide also reveals a lot of lagoons and animal life and things. Everyone says it's so much fun. And then the beach is flanked by black cliffs. Now, one of the websites I reviewed says that the beach has lifeguards. I don't know if it does, but this one website said it did. I didn't find any others that said it did. Now, this incident happened June 19th, 1996. So the group went to a restaurant right on the beach, this beach. They had dinner, and Renee's mom said, yeah, he had squid. He loved it. He finished before everybody else. And then he ran down the stairs from the restaurant to the beach. Mom said, hey, we can see him right there. So she wasn't worried. And he takes his clothes off and he's playing in the sand, just like every kid would. Well, Renee and her boyfriend finish dinner, and they start down the boardwalk to the beach. Renee, every relative of his stated that Renee was very afraid of water, specifically the ocean. He wouldn't even go near it. And the parents liked that because they knew that he'd never get himself in trouble like that. So keep that in mind. Well, as they start going down the boardwalk, they're getting close to the sand. Renee picks up his shirt and his pants, and he goes running down the beach. And the way the beach is, he ran over a little bluff, and for just a few seconds, his mom said he was out of sight. And she said, that freaked me out, so I ran. A few seconds later, I get over the bluff, and there's a pile of his clothes sitting there on the beach. She looks around. There's nobody in sight, and she could see a long ways. The ocean's a long ways away that way. The cliffs are a long ways away that way, and more beach is a long ways away that way. and her boyfriend are just befuddled. So they look down and they see his little feet going up to the clothes. She specifically stated that his tracks ended at the clothes. She specifically said that. And she was factual when she said, I looked hard. There was nothing anywhere. She made a statement to the press years later. This was the statement. It was like the earth swallowed him up. Renee was nowhere near the water. His tracks ended at the clothes. Do you remember, I've told you about this show before. I don't have any financial interest in it, but there's a show on Amazon called Vanished. I did it for the History Channel. And part of that was a series of disappearances, kind of similar to Renee's. In one instance, two climbing buddies are up the side of Shasta and they see their partner walking up ahead of them, and one minute he's there and the next minute he's not. And there's no crevasses, there's no nothing. There's no trees, they're up above tree line, there's nothing. And I met with a theoretical physicist, John Brandenburg, who worked for NASA at the time. And we had this long conversation. And this is back when I was pretty innocent, didn't know a lot about the world. He said, Dave, portals are real. And what you just explained would be a typical disappearance related to a portal taking him, this man on the mountain. And he says, we've been studying these for years, and we've been trying to understand how we can arm the portal to use it for an offensive weapon of war. And he says, we know that there's intelligence involved in this, because it always happens when people turn away or out of view, or as you say, point of separation. But it never happens in front of somebody so they see it. Exactly. Well, at the time Renee disappears, Anita realizes the situation and gets on her phone right away and calls the local Portuguese police in this little city. And she explains, yeah, we're on the beach. I took my eyes off of him for a few seconds and he was gone. And they interrupted her and they said, well, your son drowned. He's in the ocean. We're not going to come out. I read that and I almost choked. What? I read it again and I thought, well, maybe somebody's making it up. I checked 3 other sources. They all said the same thing. The police said they wouldn't come out. But then she explained again, no, he's not in the water. He's too far from the water. He couldn't have gotten to the water. No, ma'am, he's in the water. He's dead. So then she threw a fit and said, you need to come out here right now. Eventually she gets the police out there. And eventually they gave it a half-hearted effort where they searched for 2 days, which is ridiculous. There's no mention of boats going up and down the coast looking for a body. If they believed he's in the water, why aren't they looking on the coast in the water for a body? But they searched land. I say that's an unbelievable response by any police department anywhere in the world. I don't care if it's third world or not, which it's not. But if I ran a police department and somebody said that, I'd fire them immediately. Well, Anita estimated that Renee was no more than 60 feet from them when they went over this bluff. She said he was really close. Eventually, a federal agent in Portugal gets Anita's case and Renee's disappearance. He states that he thoroughly checked with that local police department And he said, they never wrote a report. What? Friends, this isn't like 50 years ago. No, this is like in the late 1990s, 1996. Yeah, they never wrote a report. And she said, well, that's impossible because they were there for 2 days searching. He goes, no, I know. And I went to them and I found some people that said that they did search, but they never wrote a report. And I could never find a report. So I need to kind of put it all together again. So stop for a second. I know this seems like it's kind of funny, but it's not funny at all. Because if you were Anita, you're in a foreign country, a foreign language, with people, the police, who aren't helping you. At the time of the greatest need in your life, and they're walking from you and they don't care. There can be, and it involves your son, I don't know of a worse situation, really. Really. That's why I tell people, and I'm telling you, you got to be very careful where you travel in this world. Now, if you're traveling with your boyfriend or whatever, then you have to worry about medical. If you break your leg somewhere, do they even have hospitals that have first-rate operating rooms and things? And therein lies the issue. If you bring children into the equation, the issues get more complicated, as you can see by what I've explained. Now, would the situation have been handled differently if it was a Florida beach? Of course. They would have had helicopters, boats off the coast, ATVs on the beach. They would have had blocks cordoned off. No, they would have. They would have had 100 police officers there within an hour. Yeah. But no, you're in a little tiny town in Portugal who doesn't give a rat's crap about you. Now, Anita notified Renee's dad right after it happened. His dad is smart. And he wasn't there, but the wife is adamant that he didn't go in the water. But the police are throwing this bitch fit that he did. So the dad has some resources of his own. And he calls a current expert, oceanographic and current expert. You know, the currents off the coast. And asks him, hey, can you look at the day of June 19th off this beach in Portugal? And if my son would have went in the water, where would the currents have taken him? A couple days later, the expert calls back and goes, sir, your son disappeared at a time where the currents were non-functional, essentially. But the tide was coming in, which means the waves would have brought him back up onto shore. So he wasn't washed out to sea. He would have been washed up on land. Well, of course, the dad sends the report back to Portuguese police. They don't give two craps. They don't care. They're not going to do anything. Well, knowing that he would have washed up, but he didn't because he wasn't in the water and because the track stopped. In the year 2000, rumors started to swell that Renee may have been taken by the same subject who kidnapped Madeleine McCann. The German police got on it and they started to investigate that suspect, where he might have lived, the associations, the timelines. And in the end, the German police couldn't connect the cases with the suspect. Many of the sites that reviewed exactly what I've explained to you stated there wasn't enough time between when Anita lost sight of Renee and came over the bluff for someone to grab Renee and disappear, which is true. Well, Anita and her ex, Andre, went to the German police and went to Interpol and asked them, right after this happened, to investigate the disappearance. Interpol is the international police, probably the most worthless police agency in the world. They really don't investigate anything. They keep statistics on international crime, and they'll facilitate the movement of information, but that's it, really. They're worthless. But when they went to German police and asked, I'm amazed that the German police didn't help them, because they're citizens. So after that Madeleine McCann suspect was ruled out, they really got nothing. Now this is actually a picture of Renee on the beach where he disappeared in the days before the disappearance. Now let's go through some facts. Just the facts. Renee was last seen on a beach adjacent to the ocean. Renee was German, and both of his parents were German. He disappeared without his father present. I've talked to you about this before. Renee was out of sight for just seconds. Renee's clothes were laying on the beach where his tracks ended. The 2-day search by police, nothing. Police believe, as they always do, that Renee drowned, even though they had no evidence to even support that he was near the water. Here's the heartbreaker, folks. I've said this so many times in so many cases. Renee's parents, the ones that were divorced, they went to that beach every year for 14 years, hoping that something would break. They'd find something. Somebody in town would talk to them. No leads, no evidence, nothing. Unbelievable. Now, you have the facts. Let's think about the profile points. Victim's German. I've told you before, German disappearances, most common. When Renee ran over the bluff and got out of sight, what do we call that? Point of separation. We talk about tracks. No tracks leading to the victim. Well, the tracks ended at his clothes. Incident happened next to the ocean, water. Missing clothing. His clothes were found where the tracks ended, on the beach. Another point that we don't talk about too much, but I'm going to hammer this one home this time. His father was not present when he disappeared. Now, if you read my books, I bring this up a lot. I don't bring it up enough here because sometimes it's very hard to decipher if the father was there or not based on the articles and the evidence I can find. In this one, it was easy. Do you know how many cases I have documented where the parents say, hey, my son, my daughter was right here. I turned, I came back around, and they were gone. Do you know how many times? If you read my books, you know, there's many. And when I first started to read about this in National Park Service reports, I thought, well, you know, maybe the parents aren't being diligent, and that's their way to kind of excuse their behavior. When I figured out the dozens of times, maybe more, that this has happened, there's nothing logically that can support that. Logically meaning until you start talking to physicists. I was on a site, and I won't mention it, but it's a huge site where people go on, make comments and this and that. And on this case, there was a long discussion about missing 411. Somebody said, well, this sure seems like a missing 411 case. And several people piped in and said, it sure does. So the word is getting out there, and people are starting to understand these profile points that I talk about. You would do me a big favor. Take the link to this video and put it on your social media. Really, it would help. And I see people putting comments up on videos saying just algorithm. It doesn't help. You don't have to do that. I appreciate it, but you don't have to do it. But no, all of you guys are great people. And you're great people because you care. A lot of people ridicule me and say, why am I even doing this? Because if I can save one family the heartache of what Renee's parents went through, it's all worth it. The point being is that I'm not going to talk bad about his mom for letting Renee play on the beach and she wasn't right next to him, but I can tell you from what I know about this that there's no way in heck, if I was a parent, I would ever let my child get away from me like that on the beach. Because as you can see, things can happen rapidly and there's no coming back from it. I appreciate you guys being here. That's the story today. Huck moved around a little bit on us. She decided she needed to stretch her legs. There she is, sleeping. Poor girl. I think I wore her out today. Be safe, be kind. It's a kindness revolution. Paulides out.